Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the F4L Headquarters podcast. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. All right. Okay, everyone. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Simmer down. It's fine. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I am your host with the most, here to welcome you to the F4L Headquarters podcast. And this is a special occasion, and this is a special edition, ultimately, as something new. And something that I think is far not done enough, actually, and that is a full show of purely recognizing others' accomplishments. Also, a little bit of a celebration of my own, as it was, get this, 24 years ago, as of Saturday, when I began my journey to fulfill a childhood dream. Not only did I start that journey, I accomplished that very dream. 6 months before I graduated from high school, I started training at the Killer Kowalski School of Wrestling in Malden, Mass. To fulfill a childhood dream of becoming a professional wrestler. And to say any of that was easy, and to undersell everything that I've had to do to get there, that is a story that can only be told a lot longer than any podcast is willing to give someone airtime for. But what I've wanted to do for quite some time, and one of the things that I like to remind people, is we come to a point in our careers, or come to a point in our lives, where who has had 24 years in a business that I have dedicated a lot to, and I have a lot of passion for, I believe in. I've had a lot of ups and downs. I've lost a lot of friends. I've probably lost more friends in that field than anywhere else. But it opened up doors and windows of opportunities to other places like entertainment, being able to become an anti-bullying advocate, giving me purpose and reason. People have often asked me, what is it that makes you want to become a professional wrestler? Even when I was switching over from what I was doing at the time, which was many other sports. I also, in high school, I was a very intelligent individual. I was an academic scholar. I did very well in school. But I was also on the soccer/football team for the American audience. American audience, I was on the soccer team. To the world audience, I was on the football team. Except for the year that I did play both, which I decided never to do again. I was also on the wrestling squad. I was also on the swim team. I began lifting weights at a young age, and really what began that whole thing was just looking in the mirror when I was 10 or 11 years old. I was really about 9 when I realized that I'm just not happy with how I look. At 9 years old, I was so skinny you could see my bones. Granted, I didn't eat all that often, as I've mentioned before. Growing up was not the easiest thing in the world, but I overcame that. And I just began training in various forms of martial arts when I was about 4. The neighborhood in which I lived in was not the nicest neighborhood in the world, and I needed those things to survive. But it also gave me a purpose, and it gave me a sense of belonging. The admiration, the respect I got on a mat in these various tournaments all over the place, up and down the East Coast, was something I didn't get at home. I was a nobody at home. I was just one of the kids, and I was the eldest of four. And it was a tough time growing up, where especially since I was the only one that really had any ambition. I was the one that had creativity, and it was often silenced and set aside and also labeled as a waste of time or not smart enough or not intelligent or ridiculous even. And the purpose of what I do in life is to continue to inspire others to silence those critics who tell you can't do anything that you set your heart to. Something I want to do starting this show, is once a week, probably on Sundays, when scheduling permitted, I'm going to take a moment, I'm going to take a day out of the week to highlight some amazing people who are people like myself, who don't let things stand in their way of achieving their goals and dreams. People who continue to grow in time and whatnot. These are not just people in sports or entertainment. Some of these people are just regular, everyday people who just keep continuing to have a great work ethic, continue to become and evolve. And I'm going to be thanking people, and I'm going to be acknowledging people that some of these names you've heard before on the show. Some of them maybe you haven't. But one thing I want you guys to do at the end of this show is I want to let you guys know that these people are absolutely worthy of not only a shout out or recognition, but admiration. These are the future of the world. These people are currently dream masters and dream warriors. They continue to grow. They continue to build on their legacy. And it doesn't matter if it's entertainment or the sports world, young, old, male, female, wherever country they come from. The one thing that always should stand out is the fact that they have a drive. They have personality. They have endurance. They have, well, all honesty, they live the F4L way, regardless if they know it or not. And this show is going to be a very interesting show, as we're going to highlight some of these names of those people who you may never have heard of. But I've said some of their names before, and I'm going to say their names again, because they are worthy of it. Now, they're going to be, every week or so, we're going to have new and more people who I'm going to highlight. I'm going to try my best not to highlight the same people over and over again, but you know what? I'm not going to I'm not going to not recognize someone's greatness if they have a great moment in the midst of everything else after I've already listed them 5 weeks in a row. Because guess what? One of the things that I have been gifted with is the ability to see and spot talent, to see and spot greatness. What do I see in that? Is these amazing human beings. People who live differently than everybody else, who work harder than everybody else. And what do they work on? What are their goals, dreams, admirations? And they continue to grow and amaze even me. And I'm going to take this moment to appreciate all of them. But first, I want to do something else, and that is honor my wife and all of those other veterans out there. And it's something that I don't think that gets played a lot. And I'm going to play our national anthem. So, bear with me. And I ask for you, wherever you are, to take a moment to reflect. Whatever country you are, whether you're in the United States or not, one thing I want you to hold in your heart is your belief in oneself, and know that this, no matter where you are in the world, the F4L headquarters is your home too. So, take it away, band.
Oh, say can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming.
Fantastic. 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 Good job. Ladies and gentlemen, my very talented Ant Band have been working hard on their singing voices. And not only do they break up the transitions, but they are also very talented musicians, as you heard. And let's give it up for the Ant Band. Congratulations to the Ant Band, who have been working hard on new music and all for you guys. And all kinds of fun things. So, not everyone gives praise to their Ant Bands, but I do. So, let's start things off with the first. Let's give the first person a shout out. So, now I don't know what exactly that has to do with this person. Maybe this is a better one. Hold on. Yeah, that's probably better. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to introduce you guys to a young friend of mine from the Instagram world. His name is Riker Van Mill. He is a young man who is working on his Instagram stuff, and he is a young man who is trying to build his own brand. And I got to tell you, social media is an interesting thing. There are so many people on there, and I also want to say that as many people as there are some people who are very good in the world, and there are some people who are just take advantage of it or don't use it the right ways. Well, I want to say that Riker is a young man who is grateful for the people that he allows into his world. His followers are important to him. And unlike a lot of other people who just get followers who are just numbers, this young man actually takes time to appreciate those who appreciate and follow him. He's a young man who has a great deal of respect. He's a young man who has fantastic manners. He's very respectful. And he might be one of the nicest young men out there. And I want to say that he is, if you want to look for someone who is a great role model, a great young man who has a lot of promise in the world, who just wants to be accepted and wants to have notoriety and friendship and just real connections, I do encourage you to go find out Riker Van Mill. His handle, it would be IHAQS62. You'll find him on Instagram, of course. He's looking for more followers. The young man has he has more than I do, all honesty. And you know what? He takes his time to help others who don't have a lot of friends and other people who aren't as popular, like himself. And he puts away that selfish card. And what he does is he's able to utilize his own self and his connection to help others. And that is a admirable thing. So go follow him, IHAQS62 on Instagram. He's a tremendous young man with a lot of promise in the world. He's a very polite, respectful young man who likes to connect with his audience. And I do encourage people to be respectful when dealing with people online, as it is a interesting world. And I've said before about how it's important to stay vigilant when people are getting too rowdy. And I want to remind people in general, this goes for everyone across the board. I don't think I need to say it too much, but if you're someone who's aspiring to do Instagram or YouTube and you want to become the next influencer, quote, as I do air quotes that you guys can't see, something I'm going to tell you guys, and I want you guys to take it for a grain of salt, or hopefully, as you know, this is to help more than anything else. But remember, you're a human being. You're not a puppet. You're not a monkey. You're not a puppy dog. I've seen many people take advantage of these, quote, lives or these other things where people will jump on these things where these people are just trying to be accepted and want to have connections, and people are making mockery out of it by, making fun of the people or, putting them in humiliating situations. And I just want to say across the board, just be respectful when dealing with things online. You do not need to do anything that other people make you to do. You don't need to do what everyone else wants you to do. And I encourage you guys to look into those things. And when people ask you to do things during your lives, whether it be dance or do something that sounds strange to you, listen, if it sounds strange and uncomfortable to you, and there's probably a reason for it. That's your inner conscience telling you that something's off. You don't need to be accepted by people who just want you to do things just because they want to make a fool of you. Take it from someone who was the number one school clown in elementary school. My goal in elementary school was to become the number one school clown because I didn't want to see people sad. I didn't want to see people cry. So I went to great lengths in elementary school to make sure every single person in the school laughed and had a good time, usually at my expense. Now, as I mentioned before, I never got bullied. People didn't dare to. But I would also not allow other people to make other people feel bad either. So if I wasn't making someone laugh, then I was usually standing up for the kids who no one was paying attention to, or I was standing up for the kids who were quiet when the bullies like to ride on them. Because you know what? No one deserves to be bullied no matter where it is, social media, online, in school, at home, nowhere. There's no reason for bullying. There's no place for bullying. And when I see it, it makes me angry and upset because these people deserve more and better than that. So just keep that in mind, those who are influencers out there and people who want to become big on these social platforms. You're not a monkey or a puppet. You're a human being, first and foremost. You don't have to do anything because everybody else wants you to do it. So I just want to make that broad statement right quick before I continue. So again, Riker Van Mill, who is a newer person, a name you may not have heard before, but he is a very polite young man who I do say, if you want to help him out by giving him a like and a follow, he's a tremendous young man who really appreciates it. So let's help him out and give someone with some respect in return. Thank you. Ants, I guess we'll use guys to separate people. So Ants, bring us to our next person, shall we? You guys are slow today. All right, so this is going to be, as you could tell by that transition, thank you, Ants, working on their multiple time skills here in their Jumbotron. I appreciate you guys. Anyway, we're going to acknowledge the brothers from Orlando, Florida, the Adele Boys, next up. And don't worry, everyone's going to get their own little piece here, and everyone who I have to talk about today earns a talking about, as they're all doing phenomenal in their own rights. Let me tell you about Anthony the Hunter, Mason the Hammer, Ty the Devil, and Troy the Terror Adele. 4 brothers, Orlando, Florida, who it's not fair to say they're Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu specialists out of Florida. It's not right to say that they're wrestling specialists. It's not right to say they're football specialists, baseball specialists, motocross specialists. Why don't we just say it for once and for all? The Adele Boys are pure athletes. Let me tell you what makes a pure athlete. And there are some other people in this list who also do multiple different things. But when it comes to the Adele Boys, not only are they leaders on a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu mat or in a boxing ring or a Muay Thai boxing thing or a wrestling mat. But that same passion, that same drive, that same everything that they bring upon transitions into every single sport that they are involved in. And let me tell you, I don't think there is a sport the Adele boys don't, number one, participate in, or two, don't excel in. They have to be at least in the top 5 of just about any bracket. Anthony the Hunter Adele, the eldest of the 4, is a tremendous athlete, and he's tremendous in both Greco-Roman wrestling as well as Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Mason the Hammer Adele, not only is he one of the most charismatic members of the family, and he has that natural charisma that you cannot learn on a mat or in a ring or on a field. Mason the Hammer has the natural ability to just connect with the audience, knows how to do the right amount of showboating, but also has the confidence in pretty much any sport he plays in, and holds championships in all of those things, whether it be Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which, again, this weekend he crushed it down there in Florida, showed that this is Odell country down there, as well as wrestling, and then he added in his football background as well. Mason the Hammer Adele, by the way, shout out to him. Happy birthday to him. He just celebrated his birthday, and he's an example as you only get even more powerful in age, and as you get older, you continue to add to your legacy. And Ty the Devil Adele is another absolute beast when it comes to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and pretty much anything he brings. He also has that personality and that flair, and the right amount of confidence you need to be successful on any mat. Troy is just starting things out. He's the youngest of the Adeles, but much like his older brothers, it is sure and it's plain to see that it runs in the Adele blood. And they can give the praise to whoever they want, but when it comes down to it, it is their connection to each other and what they share, which is that Odell blood that makes them the premier athletes out of Florida. I know there are some other greats down there, but when you want to talk about greatness across multiple different sports, they might be the Florida-based sports leaders of anything. And again, I'm going to be talking about some other people who had a pretty big weekend. Some of them had to be in the same events as the Adele boys. But, I want to say that seeing every single one of the Adele boys do and bring to the table what they do, they are a measuring stick. I've said this on multiple occasions, both to them and about them. We have some very talented and I have put a list out there multiple times, future UFC champions, right? And some of these people, you're going to hear some of these names today that I've said before. Some of them you haven't heard enough. Some of them are not into the MMA world at all. But one of the things that you cannot surpass is when it comes to the Adele boys, to say that they're future UFC champions is going to undersell who the Adele boys are. They are pure athletes no matter what sport it is. And they're going to be champions in any sport they choose to play in. So I just wanted to shout them out again. And I know a lot of people are just kind of, it blows my mind. Just want to take a minute real quick it blows my mind how all of a sudden other people are paying attention to people like the Adeles and some of the other names on this list, when I have for months and years have said that these are the leaders in the future of each of these sports. So I want to say I told everyone so, and I did. So, and I continue to do so. So that is the Adele boys. Guys, take us to our next people, please and thank you. Now, to be fair, and so you guys know, there are 14 people on this list tonight. This show could take all of the time I have to talk about each of these people. But I'm going to try to do my best to keep it as... so we're not getting all wordy, and so the memory sticks in with everybody, because these people are amazing human beings. And I want you guys all to pay attention, because these are the people who are the future of each of the industries and the future of the world in general. And, you know, when I talk about what I've done years ago, and I talk about celebrations, and I talk about anniversaries, right? One of the things that doesn't get talked about enough is the F4L. And those who live the F4L way without even knowing they live the F4L way. And every year, I always try to recognize people who demonstrate what F4L means. People who live the F4L way without really acknowledging or really knowing that they are living the F4L way. What is the F4L way? The F4L, first of all, is a family. It's a familyhood. It's a brotherhood or a sisterhood. It is a worldwide family phenomenon. It is being accepted as family, first and foremost. But what that code is, to live the F4L means to live life with love, caring, compassion, understanding. Hold on. Love, caring, compassion, understanding, and respect for each other's differences. And being the leader, founder, one of the founders of the F4L, being someone who lives the F4L way. The name of the show is the F4L Headquarters Podcast for a reason. There's a reason why I am the F4L icon, is because I am seen as the leader, spokesman, and one of the founders of the original. A lot of people are amazed to know that the F4L really is a thing. And it's a family. It's a brotherhood, a sisterhood. It's when you don't think you know it, you do. And I'll tell you some stories about the F4L, that feeling later. But one of the things that I like to do every year is keep an eye out and recognize people who live the F4L way, who we welcome to the F4L family and the brotherhood. So those people who might get it confused. So the icons of the F4L that are our YouTube show, that is a little bit different than what I'm talking about. The Icons of the F4L is a show. It's a YouTube-based wrestling show that my son and I started years ago, formerly known as Jazz and Sons Dream Matches. That has evolved over the years. It went from Jazz and Sons Dream Matches to Jazz and Sons Dream Masters. And then when we added women to the roster, Jazz and Sons Dream Warriors and Dream Masters. And then over the years, it has just evolved, and now it is just Icons of the F4L, one blanket statement, because the whole show has evolved. And when people now think of the F4L, sometimes they think of the YouTube wrestling show, or sometimes they think of just this podcast. But what the F4L means, what it is a lifestyle. It's how you live your life every single day. It's being considered to be part of the family. It's being treated as a brother or a sister within the F4L. When you're feeling your lowest, you reach out to your brothers and your sisters who are in your F4L. And they will, from wherever they are, they will reach out and help you up. That is the idea, because a F4L is also a real friend. And real friends don't kick you when you're down, they help you up. They elevate you and they support you in your goals and your dreams, no matter what it is. And whether you like to be in the entertainment world or the sports world, we don't judge, because we respect each other's differences. We don't care if you play American football or you play soccer, or what you call either one, because we respect everyone for what they do and what they bring to the table for living as themselves. So that being said, we have some people who have already reached that level of being F4L. We have people who I have been seeing and watching. If you don't think I don't pay attention, you'd be wrong. And, of course, we have to start with the leader of the nation himself, Ryder the Nation Lockwood, out of California. Ryder Lockwood, a future UFC champion. I said that before. What I also said before is he was a natural showman. And what I think I'm amazed about with Ryder Lockwood is his diverse ambition and his ability to apply himself to pretty much everything by just being him. Being a natural at all of it, by taking it all in, by being a leader, by being a role model, and by being a brother on a mat and a brother at home. I've seen his interactions. He gets the connection with his peers. He applies his skills. He applies his charm. And he has a natural charisma that cannot be learned on a mat or on a field. He has an instant likability. And he treats everyone with respect, dignity. And he is a tremendous young man. So we want to recognize Ryder Lockwood, Ryder Nation himself, as being one of those people who we see as being an absolute representation of what the F4L is. And we will be in touch with Ryder as we are going to be recognizing, well, there are some other people on this list too, but Ryder Lockwood is one of the first people we're going to recognize as a member of into the fraternity, if you would, and welcome to the brotherhood that is the F4L. As Ryder Lockwood, it doesn't matter if it's raining or snowing. He doesn't let those things get in the way of his goals and dreams, and he doesn't set himself back, and he also doesn't seem to have any kind of quit in this young man. It's a tremendous work ethic in everything that he applies himself into, which is pretty much everything he does. Whether it be wrestling, jiu-jitsu, baseball, Ryder Lockwood is an all-around American kid. But in all honesty, he is also the epitome of what the F4L is. He treats everyone with respect and dignity. He's a great role model. And he does everything that he needs to make his goals and dreams happen. And he also supports people to do that as well. So we want to recognize Ryder to the Nation Lockwood as a member of the F4L family officially. So there you go. There's that. And of course, all these people are welcome to come here to the F4L Headquarters podcast to tell people why I say these things about them, because it would take them 2 seconds for this audience to realize that these are the people who are the future of the world. And without these people, each of these sports would die. Each of these sports, people would lose interest in, and people would just let go do other things. I don't think there is an ounce of laziness in Ryder Lockwood or any of these amazing human beings. And that is what they see. And I do support the nation that is Ryder Lockwood. The next person I want to thank, ants. Alrighty, folks. So the next person I wanted to shout out or recognize and thank is my guest this past Friday, Sheldon Goldberg. Sheldon Goldberg, a longtime good friend of mine, the former promoter of New England Championship Wrestling, wrestling historian, author, and all-around good guy I've known for a number of years. He's an honorary good friend of mine and someone who's helped me out in my early wrestling career. Without people like Sheldon Goldberg in the wrestling world, in the New England scene, there would be none of me, and there would be many other people in New England who would not have the success they do in pro wrestling if it wasn't for men like Sheldon Goldberg. So I wanted to thank him for coming on the show on Friday. And by the way, the video portion of that is out now on my YouTube channel that you're hearing this podcast on currently, and everywhere else the podcast is heard. But I want to say thank you to Sheldon for taking time on Friday, for coming on here and catching up here. And I really do encourage you guys to go check out Sheldon's new book, The Last Fall. And it sounds like it's a great book. It sounds like it's a good redemption story. And you don't necessarily have to be a wrestling fan to understand the story, as Sheldon had said. I look forward to reviewing this and for you guys, and maybe we'll have to have Sheldon come back for a little bit of a show and tell after the fact to chat about it some more. But also, I'm very happy to say that I will be there live this Thursday for Sheldon's book launch. As very proud and happy to support my friends who are making their own goals and dreams happen. And Sheldon's someone who was helpful in my early career, so why wouldn't I be there for him when he is starting something else? So there's a sense of loyalty, folks, and I do suggest people look into those things and live those ways. That is also the F4L way. So thank you to Sheldon Goldberg again for coming on Friday, and I will see him on Thursday for his book launch, and I'm very excited about that. All right, thank you again, and continuing on. Ants. Yep, we are back again. You know it. All right, folks, we have someone here I'm going to mention next, who is, someone we haven't mentioned except for a couple times when I was doing my future UFC champions realms of things. I want to recognize a new person who you may not have heard of. One second, as I'm getting notified that people are getting back to me, apparently, as I'm talking nicely about them. Excellent, excellent. So the next person I want to recognize is another person as a rising star in the MMA world. And I have to apologize. I just found out that he's also a fellow YouTuber, of course. Because everyone these days wants to be on YouTube. I'm just kidding. All right, everyone. I want to acknowledge again. I said his name once before in our future UFC champions thing. Let's talk about Jesse Untamed. He's a yellow belt, apparently, in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's also an all-around champion in multiple things that he's done in the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu world. Also on YouTube, by the way. I got to tell you that over the weekend, he participated in the same tournament as the Adels and all these other amazing athletes. And some of these people were also there. We'll get to them when it comes to their time. However, Jesse Untamed has something a little bit different in the sense that he has a very laid-back and charismatic way about him that is, I can't quite wrap my hand around. But what he reminds me of is, this is in no way to be disrespectful at all, he reminds me of, if you guys are familiar with the Shamrocks, he reminds me of a young Frank Shamrock. Frank Shamrock, or sometimes even Ken, would be kind of charismatic. Yeah, I don't know. Frank and Ken Shamrock might be not where that is either, now that I think about it. By the way, Ken Shamrock, a longtime friend of mine. I really respect Ken for all he's done, not just in the MMA world, but I think people today are really forget about the guys who started the UFC. Before there was the Conor McGregors or the Khabibs of the world, there was guys like Ken Shamrock, Frank Shamrock, Tito Ortiz, Chuck Liddell, all of those originals, if you would, Dan Severns of the world, who really pioneered the UFC. But you know what? Jesse Untamed is a young man who has the it factor, and I'm not so certain that even the UFC is going to be his thing. I think he's more of a wrestling guy. He is a larger-than-life personality. I'm not so certain that UFC is going to be his, I guess you say, the glass ceiling for him. I could see Jesse easily becoming and transitioning into something even more, something more showboaty when it comes to combat sports if he wishes to do that. But I think he is a very charismatic individual who has a natural way about him that is a very laid. You know what? There's another person who is going to be who's on this list who he reminds me of, and I wonder. You know, it's amazing to me to see that kind of personality in a youth MMA fighter, especially since usually it's the older ones who have that kind of a laid back and kind of charismatic way about them. Because usually, the older you get, you realize you have to have that. You have to have the thing that sets you aside, and this young man has that already. So Jesse Untamed, who did very well over the weekend down there in Orlando, congratulations to him. I said he was going to do big things. One of those many people on this list I said was going to be big. And almost as soon as I say it, they go ahead and they do it. Another person maybe didn't have the weekend they wanted to, but we're going to get into him. We want to say how proud of him we are. But when we get to him, we will. But Jesse Untamed, great job living up to the hype, so to speak. Go check out his YouTube page. I watched some of it, and I died laughing through most of it. So I had to say that was probably the most entertaining MMA page I've seen in a while. So thank you to him for the laugh. I appreciate it. But more importantly, I love seeing interactions with people, and I love seeing that their families take passion and pride in helping their families. I think one of the things that is key for all of these people are the support that they have that is around them. I really have to say that has to be said about everybody on this list. I'm not so certain about the first gentleman I mentioned, Riker Vindman. But all these other people I've mentioned, Sheldon Goldberg, I'm sure, would say that a lot of people helped influence him in his younger life. But when it comes to the Adele boys, the Ryder Lockwood, and Jesse Untamed, and some of these other people we're going to mention, I think their support that they have, the families, is a heartwarming thing. I think that is something that the world needs more of. The world needs more families and more people who are willing to not just support their kids and their goals and their dreams, but also not think that they're above the kids and they're not afraid to learn something new from their kids. And they're not afraid to lower themselves to kind of make fools of themselves for their kids' benefit. And what I mean by that, I mean, the parents who, like, for example, on my podcast, when another young man who we're going to mention a little later on was on, he put his poor dad in a submission hold and made him tap out. That's the kind of support and that's the kind of, real love and support you have from your family that makes you successful, and not just in sports, but in life. I didn't have that growing up, but I found other people to kind of step into that role. These people have these people in their corner, and that's an amazing thing. And what's also incredible is the fact that they've recognized, if it wasn't for, their parents and their guardians and the people who bring them and help them with these things, they wouldn't be as successful as they are. And the people we've already mentioned thus far, I think, would all fall into that category thus far. The next young man, let's get in. Also, again, open invitation for everyone who I mentioned. So here we go. Let's get to the next person. This is going to be fun. All right, let's do this too. All right, class is in session, everybody. I want to tell you guys about a young man who I have seen, and I'm sure maybe you've heard of. I'm sad that I missed him when he was here, but I want to talk to another one of our fine friends from down under, Elijah Richardson, the young man who has learned something that I got to say that sometimes it takes people a lifetime to realize they have something, a gift that many people are born with, but not everybody knows how to use. And that is their ability to speak. Their mouths, their words. And Elijah Richardson, a young man from Australia, has taken the world by storm because he's trying to teach the world about, the oceans and keeping them clean and how important the environment is. Ocean preservation and climate change. And this young man has done a tremendous job in cleaning the oceans and so forth because he wants to have a nice clean waterway, protect the animals and the marine life within it. And you know what? He's not an athlete per se. He's a human being who has a heart, and he's a human being who has a goal and a dream, and his dream is for a better world, a world of health, a world of a clean water so the animals aren't getting hurt by pollution and numerous other things that hurt the animals in the water. Now, a lot of people can love or hate the sharks, but what about all the nice fish, the dolphins, the pretty fish of the world? And a lot of people misunderstand a lot of these mysterious sea creatures, as I've tried to, on this show many times, try to debunk a lot of those myths about sharks and tell people that they're just fish. They're fish that are amazing creatures. Anything in the ocean is an amazing thing. Anything living is an amazing thing. Yeah, sure, everything has its purpose and everything has its kind of ways about it, but we need to do a better job taking care of not just ourselves, but our environments as well. I talk about making the world a better place as far as ending bullying and making everyone feel respected and live the F4L way. Well, Elijah Richardson wants to make the world literally a better place and clean up those oceans and clean the waterways, clean up the air so we breathe longer so that when he's older, his kids can be healthy one day. Elijah Richardson is a young man who I view to be the Australian version of myself. He has that ambition. He has the ability to know how to use his voice, his words for the good. I have gone to many schools on my time, schools and assemblies to talk about anti-bullying and making the world a better place as far as bringing peace and finding tranquility with each other and being able to stand up for what's right and ending violence violence in the sense of senseless wars, of fights for no apparent reason and fights in which innocent people are getting caught in the crossfire. Well, Elijah is the version of that of me down in Australia, but he's cleaning up the world where I'm cleaning up the people, I guess you'd say. And I am honored to have Elijah Richardson as part of that. And also, and of course I couldn't tell, be considering that Elijah lives and breathes the F4L way. Love, caring, compassion, understanding, and respect for each other's differences in the sense, but also as a natural leader. So we would like to also, speaking of the F4L, one of the fastest growing people within the F4L, we want to recognize Elijah Richardson as another member of our F4L family, our brotherhood, if you would. And he lives and breathes the F4L way. And Elijah Richardson is a phenomenal human being who has tremendous heart, resilience, and isn't afraid to speak up against the evils that are polluting the waterways and everything else. And I hope that one day we can get the Australian natives down here, because he was even nice enough to send me some bats. Let me tell you, I'm a little jealous of those bats. I'm not going to lie. We all know how I feel about bats on this show. But he was nice enough to send me his bats, which are better than my bats, so I'm a little jealous. But we thank Elijah Richardson and recognize him for all he does for ocean preservation and making the world and the environment a better place. So thank you, Elijah Richardson, for all you do for the environment and for being a tremendous leader and being a role model for the young and old. And I don't think you can ask for a better person as a human being than Elijah Richardson. Welcome officially. So there's that. Let's get to the next. Excuse me. Yeah, for the headquarters, Sean speaking. How may I help you? Isaiah Traina? No, he's not here yet, but eventually he will be. Ladies and gentlemen, the next person I'm going to chat about is going to be, well, Isaiah the Natural Traina. He's a young man who is another MMA rising star in MMA, another future UFC champion. And he's also a young man who just represented the country in the United States in the games across, I believe it was in Germany. We want to thank Isaiah Traina for representing the United States in great fashion, showing sportsmanship, leadership, and best of all, those skills that only Isaiah Traina has. Isaiah has built a name for himself and has built a legacy for himself, and we are trying and attempting to get him on here. So scheduling has been interesting, but it is something in the works. We believe in Isaiah, and it's only a matter of time till Isaiah Traina is here, so he can tell you why he is the future of the UFC. It's better for him to tell you than me, right? But I want to say, there's no one better to represent than Isaiah. He's got heart, he's got resilience, he's got drive. He's not afraid to learn from one of the best in the business. You can't get better than learning from one of the legends of UFC, Chuck Liddell. And Chuck Liddell is a man who has carved a legacy for himself and is one of those pioneers of the UFC. And again, there is no Conor McGregor or Khabib or anybody else without a Chuck Liddell in the world of pro sports. So, Isaiah Traina, we are looking for you. Make sure you get back to us soon, so you can tell everyone what I just said. All right. Ants? Wow, that's a lot going on right there. I don't know why that was all that for this. But anyway, I guess this young man, earns a lot of it. So, all right. Took a sip of my water here. we want to recognize our honorary member. By the way, thank you to Rowdy Ryder Woods for teaming up with the F4L in our Team Warfare tournament, which, by the way, is still going on. The finals are going to be later on, as in momentarily, as the tournament will continue and conclude by the end of, well, it's already today, so momentarily the finals will be held. Unfortunately, the F4L has been eliminated from the tournament, sadly. However, we wouldn't have been there if it wasn't for Ryder's leadership, as he was nice enough to help us and secure a victory in defeating the Bloodline in our Open MMA, in our Team Warfare tournament. Now, that's the fun part. Now, let's tell you a little bit about who Rowdy Ryder Woods is. And by the way, because it was not easy to call a show when there's so many riders on my on the roster already. However, I gotta say, when it comes to Rowdy Ryder Woods, there's a little bit difference than everybody else. So, when I look at Ryder Woods, I am reminded of who I was. That's that little kid sitting in the audience, and I said, one day I'm going to do that. Ryder literally is that kid right now. He is a huge pro wrestling fan. He is passionate about his wrestling fandom. He is very supportive of those he enjoys, and he's vocal about those he is not. You know, one of the things that what made me want to become a professional wrestler was just, well, for me, it became the adrenaline rush I felt when I was there live. The ability to hold the audience in the palm of your hand, to have them cheering your name or booing you even as I got older. But Ryder Woods, who, by the way, has a YouTube channel called Rowdy Ryder's Reviews on YouTube. Go check him out. He does a lot of action figure reviews and wrestling reviews. It's really a vlog thing with him and his dad and his family, and they're all supportive of the young man. And quite frankly, it's really good to see. And it reminds me that wrestling fans still do exist. And also how far we've come as a world and as a culture, where a young man can be proud of being a wrestling fan. And I'm sure it still gets some scrutiny here and there, but you know, when I was growing up in the 80s, you didn't talk about being a wrestling fan. You didn't even talk about doing martial arts at school. Like I didn't go into school and say, hey, at this tournament I had over the weekend, I made 5 people tap out. I didn't get to do that because that was things you didn't talk about in school. Because that was a red flag that would mean that that was usually a bad deal for you. Because that meant that you were going to be tried next, so to speak. And it wouldn't be for points, it would be for, a fight, and it's never a good time to get involved with that. So you didn't go to school and talk about doing martial arts because you were kind of not treated fairly by the other kids who looked at whatever sport that they did as like the better sport, which is ridiculous in hindsight. Anyone who's ever done martial arts can tell you the drive and the stamina, the conditioning that goes into it. But in all fairness, like everything else, the sport, every person who does some type of sport usually has an ignorance to how something else is done, which is why I tend to take the path of respecting everyone's sport choices. I played soccer, but I also played American football too, so they can't say I didn't do that. I got to tell you, I found soccer a lot harder than football. Soccer being world football. And American football, and I'm not going to try to make a lot of people who play American football feel bad, because they should be proud of their own accomplishments. American football, if you're passionate about that and you're good at that, so what? There's no difference between the athletes. The respect I have for the American football players, the same respect I have for a soccer player. The same respect I have for a swimmer, the same respect I have for a Brazilian jiu-jitsu fighter versus a Muay Thai fighter versus a judo champion. The same respect I have for anyone who goes out there and works hard for their goals and dreams. And growing up, you didn't talk about being a wrestling fan. You didn't talk about wrestling outside unless you had that small group of kids you knew watched wrestling. And usually it was like a fraternity. You guys would all kind of gather together at lunchtime and talk about what happened at the big pay-per-view the night before. Growing up, I was in a household where not everyone liked pro wrestling. So I did not have that luxury of being able to watch every single show. But what I did get to see was quite a spectacle, nonetheless. But when I see Ryder Woods, who is a young wrestling fan today, doing exactly the things that I did, the cheering of the bad guys and the cheering of the good guys and the booing of the bad guys and whatnot. I think for myself, I realized, as I got older, even at that age as I got older, that I looked at wrestling a little bit differently than everybody else, much like I look at everything. I don't watch something to enjoy it, which sounds sad. I study everything. Everything is an examination for me. It doesn't matter if it's sports. And a lot of that came into my martial arts background, which is why I had the record that I did, and this is why I did as well as I did. Because I didn't leave the mat. I watched every single tournament that would happen that day. I watched how everyone interacted with everybody else, because I knew eventually at some point I would have to face these people down the road. And I called it the mastering of human chess. I think it was a term I got from pro wrestling, actually, as I've heard it referred to in wrestling a few times, human chess. Usually that's by one of the tactical wrestlers, one of the grapplers, if you would. And that's actually what it is. Pro wrestling is, not for everybody, obviously. I get that. But I'm going to give you an example of someone who's also passionate about wrestling, even more so than me. And that would be my wife. My wife currently loves pro wrestling, all of it. Me, I'm more of an old school wrestling fanatic. I like the older stuff. I'll watch it here and there with her. There was a time when I refused to watch any wrestling for a little while recently, because I was disrespected as not only someone who has done it in the business, but as someone who has worked with some of these guys, and I had such respect for them. I did not want to see them being humiliated and put in situations that made them look worse, or made them look like fools. Friends of mine in the business, like AJ Styles and people like Bray Wyatt and people of that nature, who I believed in that you could do something different with if you give them the right options. I was grateful enough to be able to work with Bray and being able to kind of reinvent that. Unfortunately, that was not meant to be long, but I'm grateful for that. Now, what's a fun fact is I did say it when Ryder was on our show today. Well, during the commentary of the tournament, and it is a true story that Ryder's favorite wrestler currently is Cody Rhodes, the American Nightmare. Now, the interesting thing about that is, one, his dad was a huge influence to me. Early on, before I became a wrestler, Dusty Rhodes would tell us would do those promos, and promos, for those people who are not wrestling fans or don't know what that is, a promo is talking in wrestling. being able to tell a story. Sheldon Goldberg, actually, over the weekend, on Friday, kind of gave kind of the synopsis to what a good promo is. Being able to tell someone something and making the audience believe what they're saying is true. And the person delivering the promo needs to believe it themselves. And Dusty Rhodes, the American Dream, he believed in everything that he said. And he had the American people and the audience believing everything that he said. I have wined and dined with kings and queens, and I have also survived on pork and beans, is another one of his favorite quotes. Of course, everyone has heard the promo before about the Hard Times promo, legendary in the wrestling world. Outside the wrestling world, it's just talking. But to a fan, to a wrestling person growing up, those are words that people needed at some point. Wrestlers for me were people who didn't feel pain, who were larger than life, and heroes to other people, and helped and did the right things in life. Granted, as I got older as a wrestling fan, I already knew that my likes for different people were different than everybody else's. A lot of the kids I went to school with were big fans of Hulk Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior. I didn't like either one of them. I was more of a, Ricky Steamboat, Macho Man Randy Savage. Jake Roberts, to me, was one of the best promos in wrestling. Obviously, I don't think he got any of the dessert, anything that he should have gotten. Roddy Piper, another fantastic talent when it comes to promos, telling stories in the ring, instant heel heat. I guess I learned at a young age that there were sometimes the heels were cool. Demolition, Axe and Smash, one of my favorite tag teams. I don't care if they were good or bad. They were just demolition. The Hart Foundation, Bret the Hitman Hart, Jim the Handle Neidhart. Phenomenal individuals. Bret Hart, one of the most technically sound people, and if it wasn't for guys like Bret Hart, specifically guys like Bret Hart and the Bulldog Davey Boy Smith, and that short list of people who were not necessarily these big Hulk Hogan-sized people like me, who is 6 feet tall, would never have had an option in pro wrestling. So that's something to be said the least. But nonetheless, Ryder Woods, huge fan of the American Nightmare, Cody Rhodes. And the interesting thing about that is, sometimes you have a goal and a dream that maybe someday you might get to work with that person. I know that he's met him on a few occasions and at shows or whatever. I remember growing up listening to Dusty Rhodes promos, and in 1999, I was in a wrestling match where Dusty Rhodes, I was in the ECW, and Dusty Rhodes actually played a pivotal role in me becoming a champion at 19 years old, and was there when I won my first title. And it was actually helpful in ways that I could not believe. He took time to listen to me and ask me questions, and I asked him questions. He had a belief in my promos. And like so many other people, Dusty Rhodes had an impact on me. And a lot of people never heard that story, and I haven't really talked a lot about Dusty and a lot of these other greats. But to see Dusty Rhodes, he's being relived by his son. In all honesty, a lot of people may not know, but right now I believe that Cody Rhodes is actually living one of Dusty's most famous storylines ever. As I remember quite a few of these occasions. And what Cody's doing right now, really, if you go back to early Dusty Rhodes, is a lot of that. But anyway, it is great to see wrestling fans have passion for wrestling and also not care who knows that they have a passion for wrestling. And if Rowdy Ryder Woods ever wants to come on the show and talk about wrestling with someone who has been in wrestling world for 24 years and has worked with some of the best in the business, and someone who in 2024 returns to that very same business, then you're more than welcome, and we'll chat wrestling and probably blow your mind. But anyway, thank you to him for also stepping up as our tag team partner today. Appreciate that. And go check out Rowdy Rider Reviews on YouTube. Tremendous young man, and I wish him the very best. Let's talk about our next person. Ants, bring us to Jackson. Ants, guys awake. All right, the next shout out, of course, spoiler alert, is Lights, Camera, Action Jackson Baker. Well, folks, Action Jackson Baker, unfortunately, over the weekend, fortunately and unfortunately, apparently he was at this very same tournament that Jesse Untamed and the Adele boys were at. All honesty, considering I had said that some of these people are the best in the world, and apparently the best in the world compete in this tournament, these individuals did very well here. Now, apparently, poor Jackson got sick halfway in between the second match he had and whatnot. I know he might feel a little bit down, and I know he might have felt like he let people down, or he might feel hard on himself. As someone who's been in the situation where I have not felt 100%, and I didn't feel that I gave my best quality performance, I have to say this. Action Jackson Baker is nothing to be ashamed of. He stepped up. He went to Florida. He stepped on the mat, and he attempted to do what not many people will. Jackson has a heart. He has confidence. Yeah, and you can't sometimes do anything about those physical things. Sometimes our bodies betray us. I've had to fight injured many, many a times. I've had to fight being hungry and starving and all kinds of things growing up. And what I want to say is to Action Jackson, I know it might not feel good, or it might feel bitter, or it might feel like you failed, or it might feel like you're disappointed, but don't. You traveled all that way, granted. You traveled all that way to show up, to compete, and you did. Whether how many fights you had, you showed up, and you showed up with numbers, and people believed in you then, and they believe in you now. You can't do sometimes in life we get sick, we get hurt. That's the nature of the business, brother. I get it. But let me tell you, this is only one setback. This is only one time. And you'll be back to 100% in no time. In the next show, you're going to unleash the inner Jackson. And it's going to be lights, camera, Action Jackson Baker time. And I wish you well, and I hope you get feeling better well. I hope you feel better soon. As you have a title rematch on our show. We respect Action Jackson. We hope he'll come back on the show. I think we've already talked about him coming and being part of our end of the year watch-along event. That should be a lot of fun and interesting to have Action Jackson part of that watch-along thing with a panel of us to close out our 2023 season. That'll happen in the end of December. But Jackson is a tremendous athlete and a tremendous human being as well. Hardworking. I've gotten to know him and his family, and I respect the hell out of all of them. So I wish them all the best, and we know it's only a matter of time until they get back into the swing of things. And Jackson, I hope you feel better. Get some orange juice. You'll be good to go, brother. All right. Ants, take us to our next. We go from action to nightmares. And, of course, that's going to be, we're also going to go across the pond to talk a little bit about the nightmare Noah Tyndall. Of course, that would be the number one nightmare, Noah Tyndall. First and foremost, I think I've already said the result of his last fight, which I think I predicted several times over. But in case people have lived under a rock, and apparently they have, Noah the Nightmare Tyndall, the lad from Liverpool, has yet again cemented his legacy in defeating yet another person who claimed to be a, quote, mini beast. Well, the nightmare turned out to be too much for the mini beast, and he put the beast back in the kennel. And Noah the Nightmare Tyndall, overcoming whatever. I don't know who the heck reams this stuff, first and foremost. I make it sound like it was a surprise. I don't think it was any surprise. Noah the Nightmare Tyndall, I've watched this young man grow. I've watched him grow since he was a young lad growing into the sport. I first came across Noah when he was spreading awareness for Alzheimer's. And as someone whose grandmother and family members suffered from that, I respected the heck out of him for taking time to spread awareness for someone so young to have knowledge and have heart enough to want to raise awareness for something of that magnitude will have my respect. And Noah the Nightmare Tyndall, who actually started on our roster when we first started the initiative, what we're doing now. Over the years, he's been on and off. Noah came back to our roster in 2023, end of 2022, really, and then into 2023. And what a year he's had on our show. And in real life, Noah the Nightmare Tyndall has continued on with that legacy that he has carved for himself. Noah's been on the show, sort of. We tried to do an interview with Noah a while back. Unfortunately, it was on the old server. It was on the old system, so unfortunately it did not go as well as we had hoped. But we do plan to have the Nightmare Noah Tyndall here, and it'll be much like the Sheldon Goldberg interview, or at least that one will sure to work. And we'll also have it in video format, so you get to see the Nightmare Noah Tyndall. As he is a tremendous young man, we have a lot of respect for him. We said years ago this young man was going to be something, and all of a sudden, people are coming out of the woodwork and acknowledging the Nightmare. This is no surprise. This isn't overnight. I've known this young man was going to be huge in Liverpool. People were making a big deal out of somebody else over there. Way too much were they making a big deal about this other individual who kept on being fed fighters who just frankly weren't up to it, or kept on fighting people he knew he could beat. That doesn't make you a champion. The Nightmare Noah Tyndall is a fighting champion. He is someone who likes a good fight. He likes to scrap, as they call it. And when it comes to the times when we knew eventually, I never actually thought the two would ever have to face each other. But I was so happy when I saw that, first of all, that Noah was going to face that individual. But then, not only did he face that individual, he went into that fight, and I heard some audio of people chanting for the other kid, and people put that other kid on a pedestal, like he is some untouchable Conor McGregor type. And let me tell you, folks, he is not the Noah. He is not half as good as half of these people I mentioned already tonight. I can tell you that. He is just, well, he's right up with these other people, but except for the fact that he hasn't really had an actual challenge either. He's fought in people who are he's got the same mindset, and he knew going into this fight he couldn't do that with Noah because Noah was going to school him in that. And from the clips I saw, it looks like Noah had that all scouted, and I'm very happy and proud of Noah for, first of all, not falling into the head games that the other kid likes to play, and two, getting right in the other kid's head as well. Noah has lived up to the nightmare on our show and off our show. Hopefully he doesn't start taking too many liberties what he does on our show in real life, because I think that would be a different type of sport and he might get into trouble for some of those things. But all of a sudden, all of these fighters I'm just mentioning now, all these people I've talked about so far tonight, the Adele Boys, Ryder Lockwood, Jesse Untamed, Isaiah Trina, Jackson Baker, Nightmare Noah Tyndall, these are all people who I have said many things for many times how they are the future UFC champions. Every single one of them are absolute beasts. And all of a sudden people are like, oh, well, I got to pay attention to these people now. You should have paid attention to them before, because now the sleeping giants are going to have no choice but to start to make an example of all of these supposed tough people of the world. Let me tell you, I've seen some tough fighters. I know some of some tough fighters. And I'm very proud and happy that the people who I champion, the people who I view to be future UFC champions, have every single time lived up to that. Now, there are some people I normally shut out who are also on that list, and I do believe in all of them as well. The Menya boys are on that list. Henry and Jairo Menya, the Super Duck Grayson Russell, to name a few. The Redheaded Terror, Anthony Demoweeks, which is a training partner of Noah the Nightmare Tyndall. Another scrapping lad who will put a fight on anyone. These are the future. Dmitry Chernikov, another tough guy another tough young man out of the California area. Another person, Big E, Elijah Furton, another individual. And the list goes on and on and on. These are the future of UFC, folks. These are the people who will be setting the standard for what combat sport is. They have heart, they have drive, they're going to separate the winners from they're going to separate the real champions from the wannabes. And I couldn't be prouder of the Nightmare Noah Tyndall for showing up and doing exactly what I knew he would do. He went in and he shut them down. And I'm very proud of the Nightmare. We can't wait to have him here on the F4L Headquarters podcast to celebrate with him proper. All right. Next. Ants. Alrighty then. All right. I want to acknowledge the cast and crew of Terrifier. Yes, this past week, me and my family went to see Terrifier 2, along with some people who had not been able to see it yet. Terrifier 2, for those people who don't know, was released to theaters for a couple days this past week. My family and friends and I were able to go on Thursday night. Sad to report, my daughter was not overly fond of it. It was a little bit too much for her, but everyone else really enjoyed it, and thought it was fantastic for what it was, and we're very excited for. Well, I'm not going to spoil that for you guys if you haven't heard it by now, but we're very excited for what the future holds for all of those people involved. It's just some highlights I wanted to mention is while we're watching it, people were upset about various scenes. My daughter my friend who was with us was amazed by the performance by Elliot Fulham. The amount of things that he had to go through, he was put through, was outstanding in his eyes. My daughter felt bad for Wesley Holloway's character within the kitchen area. Anyone who knows. By the way, I'm happy to report that song is not just in my head anymore. It's on everybody else's head who was with us now. And yep, I went to see it on Thursday, and exactly what I knew was going to happen. It's still stuck in my head. Thank you to Damian Leone and everyone for coming up with that song to get it stuck in my head. Thank you. I appreciate it. And everyone else now who was with us. So yeah, I just want to say again how important it is and how groundbreaking Terrifier 2 was and how important Damian Leone and his team have been to the independent film community and how many doors it opened. So I want to say and acknowledge him and thank him for what he's done for independent cinema. If it wasn't for people like him giving the tools and the knowledge for people to kind of put their dreams out there and then have the notion to ask fans to support it and then have capture that in the bottle, it was amazing. So I want to say thank you to Damian Leone and the amazing team. And I think everyone collectively has decided that Art the Clown might be the premier clown in all of horror currently, even surpassing even Pennywise the Dancing Clown. Even Pennywise couldn't deal with being a clown half the time, but Art the Clown is the king of the clowns, if you would. So David Howard Thornton to perfection, did a great job. Okay, and next. Alrighty. Oh, this one I can do this for. Or maybe this one. Alright. Yeah. I wanted to acknowledge some YouTubers. And oddly enough, and just so you know, they're not fighters, they're not wrestlers, they're not MMA fighters, they're not horror people. They are your New Zealand family. Sam, Nadine, Denzel, and Atlanta all make up the New Zealand family. I don't know if I've talked a lot about them on the show here, but I wanted to take a moment to acknowledge how incredible it is and really how important it is to learn about people's different cultures and respect everybody's cultures. The New Zealand family, the members I just mentioned, Sam, Nadine, Atlanta, and Denzel, that goes in age form, I believe, and whatnot, from patriarch down. And even their dog is adorable, by the way. If you are a dog person, the New Zealand family have an adorable dog you have to see. Kylo, I believe his name is. It's an adorable dog. A little bit of what we call a dachshund. It's amazing. Anywho, I wanted to chat about the New Zealand family and tell you guys how incredible it is that people are out there and want to learn about various different other cultures. The New Zealand family I found out about in my YouTube studies, I guess you'd say. Those people wonder a lot of the times, being someone who's someone who is one of the original YouTube people. And when I say original YouTube people, I go back to when YouTube before it really blew up to become what it is now. I'm still pretty friendly with people who I started with YouTube around the same time of. People like the early YouTube singers, most of which are no longer there. Some of them have gone on to bigger and better things. I think a lot of times people who look at YouTube, they always think of people like Justin Bieber as like the end-all, be-all and the most successful story out there. And I have to say, I hope that that's not your ambition to become just like Justin Bieber. I encourage people to just be yourself. Carve your own legacy. You want to, start on YouTube, fine, but you don't need to do the same things as Justin Bieber to become big and famous. In fact, I would encourage you guys to do the opposite. Because if you actually did work and if you actually looked into how that's turned out for Justin and you watched his journey, I can't say anyone who would want that for their life. I don't think Justin Bieber is happy with how his thing has turned out since leaving YouTube to become the megastar that he is. And I want to say, in the past, I have been critical, but the humility part of me also has to separate from character to reality. And when it comes to goals and dreams and aspirations, I believe that when it comes to people you want to, everyone's going to have their heroes and their role models. And I'm not about to tell someone who to support and who to look up to and who not to. But what I do want to pay attention to, what I do want you to acknowledge, is to understand that his journey that started on YouTube, that everyone wants to think that they want that too, it's not the happiest ending story. I mean, it's still going, of course. But I mean, if you looked at everything that he has had to overcome and the things that he's had to deal with, even having to deal with people like me, of all people. So, I really want to encourage people, when you have an ambition and you have someone you want to acknowledge, follow your own path. And I went off a tangent as I was talking about YouTube in the early days. And all honesty, icons of the F4L or Jazz and Sons Dream matches really wouldn't have been as huge as it was if it wasn't for my exposure to YouTube. And let me tell you how I found YouTube. In fact, I didn't find YouTube. So YouTube, when it was first starting, I was part of a wrestling company that was just starting up or was in the middle of going. And this was around the time of, I was just getting back into wrestling after coming back from injury. And YouTube was really starting to really kick in. It hadn't started really big yet. It was just here and there. So the wrestling company thought, how awesome would it be to have some wrestling promos, as we've talked about before. Promo and wrestling is someone talking or a bit that someone does that isn't involving in a wrestling ring, but it's like either an acting or a skit or a talking point. That's a promo. And the company decided it was a good idea to film my promos. And again, Jazz Fitness was an unfit fitness guru, which, that was because I was, coming back to wrestling, and I was a lot bigger than I was when I first was wrestling. And a lot of that comes due to the fact that I wasn't allowed to go to a gym and work out while I was injured. And while I was in recovery from the injury, I went to regular school, earned 2 college degrees while I, handled the injury and let it heal. And then I came back to pro wrestling. And when I came back to wrestling, I looked a little bigger than I was. And the farce, as you would, is that I was not athletic. But in reality, I could still run the ropes better than most of the people in the ring. I still knew how to do all the things that I learned prior. And the one thing that set me aside from everybody else that still always did, in 2003, the year I got injured originally, it was one of the wrestling magazines had labeled me as the Golden Mike Award for being able to tell the best promos in wrestling at that time on the independent circuit. So that's where Jazz Fitness came from, the unfit fitness guru. And they were going to have me do these exercise videos, or lack thereof, and it would be a funny skit in between and getting people ready for in between the wrestling shows. And that's how I was introduced to YouTube. So the wrestling company would film these promos and put them up, and then on my off time, I would film some just to keep it going. And of course, Jazz Fitness being the heel that he is, there were a lot of legendary ones, like when I called Justin Bieber out to a fight way back in the day, in the early days of Justin Bieber when he was still popular. And of course, there were other, jazzercising was a big one. That was, of course, before copyrights on YouTube and everything else, because the music is used in that my old entrance video and all of the other countless Jazz Fitness promos were all on YouTube. And it was during a wrestling show I was introduced by the ring announcer as the YouTube sensation Jazz Fitness, because really I was the most popular thing on their YouTube channel for the wrestling company. And Jazz Fitness was being shared all over the place. And that was one of the first viral things to go from the wrestling company. So Jazz Fitness, the YouTube sensation, was born. And oddly enough, 2024, he returns again. Good for us. But now that you've heard the history of YouTube, I have a tendency to have a soft spot and become the unofficial welcoming committee to YouTubers. People who I respect and whatnot. A lot of them somehow, and they usually end up on our wrestling show, oddly enough. So it's funny how that works. But Sam, Nadine, Atlanta, and Denzel are a little bit different. They're YouTubers who like to learn about American culture, and they watch and react to certain things that they learn and certain videos about America that blows them away, considering they're in New Zealand, to learn about a different culture. What I think is fascinating about that is I myself, that's how I learn about a lot of various cultures, and how I learn a lot of various different fun facts, is I will watch a YouTube tutorial, because they're easy and they're fun to learn, and I'm a visual person. So that's how I originally discovered your New Zealand family. And I have to say, they're charming humans. And honestly, being the person that I am and the relationship I have with my family, the fact that I love spending time with my family, if I could get them all to commit to doing a show together, that'd be great. Being able to do the show with my son has been a dream, and it's been awesome. So I can relate to what that's like to work on something like that as a family, to get it over as big as it is. And the New Zealand family have done a great job with that, just being themselves, genuine, watching and reacting to the information that comes from them. What a great idea it is. And I'm honored and privileged to see the New Zealand family. And of course, yes, they're on the YouTube show too. Atlanta and Nadine are part of the Dream Warriors division in their tag team. Actually, they're the tag team champions. And Sam and Denzel are part of the Dream Masters roster on the Telenet Universal side of things. So they are very much part of the show, and goes to show you the respect we have for them. In fact, they were just on Team YouTube, representing YouTube as far as being part of that, as they teamed up with everyone's favorite YouTuber from Australia, not too far away from New Zealand, Minty Comedic Arts, as their captain, and Mike Estrin from List 25, formerly of OK Thank You. But yeah, I want to say, they're a tremendous family, and it's great to see when families interact like that and can have fun and not be one of these toxic families that we see and hear so much about as of late. These are people who enjoy spending time with each other. They can tell this. They're not being forced to do so. And it's really heartwarming and amazing to see. So just wanted to shout them out publicly for that. The next person I'm going to shout out real quick is Speedy Easton McDonald, the young football, wrestler, baseball extraordinaire individual. Speedy Easton McDonald just, I believe, wrapped up his football season. I think football is done for this season anyway. But Speedy Easton McDonald, I have to acknowledge, just because he is always working hard. He always seems to have a smile on his face. He transitions from sport to sport, much like all these other people, and he doesn't even seem to let it affect him. He always has a smile every time. And, that is a sign of someone who has a long sports career. So, Speedy Seagal, I want to acknowledge him for being someone who not only feels comfortable in a sports uniform, but also in his own skin and his own environment. he is an absolute beast on the field as much as on a mat and everything else. He puts a lot of time and effort in, but also takes time to have that family time. He's also a fantastic older brother, which being an older brother and being someone who has two kids, it's always great to see when kids can interact, especially siblings, and not want to rip each other's hairs out of their heads, which can also happen. Let's be realistic. But Easton is a great young man, and we wish him all of the best, and we think he's fantastic. So let's get to the last one. Ants? Why did I start this podcast? Why am I going back to pro wrestling next year? Why do I do the YouTube wrestling show? You know, all of those questions are fantastic questions. They're real questions. They all deserve a real answer. In all honesty, it comes down to, well, my family, my wife, my kids. It's about being a role model and also showing that there is good in the world. And showing that together we can accomplish. Together, anything is possible. I want to be that beacon, as I always am. In 2020, when I started this podcast, the world was at standstill. The world was afraid, and the world was complaining about being locked away with their families. Me, I embraced that. I love being with my family. There is nothing that brings me more joy than spending time with my wife and my kids. They are probably some of my toughest competitors when it comes to a sport or an event or a game. And as I mentioned on a recent show, the only people to ever beat me 3 times in a row in anything, and to this day this still stands, is my kids. My wife, that is still debated heavily. But my kids both can hold claim to that. My daughter first, and then my son. My daughter is a year older, but still. You know, whenever I tell someone how old my son is, and whenever I talk about, my kids and how proud I am of them, I don't think I say enough. And I think there's a lot of people out there who feel like they have the best kids in the world. And I think what's amazing for me is the fact that what's amazing to me is the fact that I was able to fulfill that other dream. And that dream was becoming the best father I could be. And I can't say that I am the very, very, very best. But I took my time with my kids. I was there for them when they needed it more than ever. I gave them the opportunities my family never was. At events and whatever, I am there. When my son needs something, I'm there. I could work 7 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours a day, come home exhausted. And if my son or my daughter needed a chat with me, I would talk to them. In fact, at the end of every single day, no matter how tired I was, when they were little, I would go in and I would talk to each of them before I'd go to bed, myself. That was after they've gone to bed. And it's interesting that I have him listed at number 14, as you guys may or may not know, on the 12th of November is my son's birthday. And he's going to be 21 years old. Time flies. But what that really I want to remind people is, it seemed like just yesterday he was 11 years old, sitting there on the couch, sick and miserable from being sick. Being a father to watch my son who was not feeling well and wanting to do something to cheer him up. My son had the vision, and I probably did the most childless thing I could do, and that's use a wrestling game that he was playing and build Peter Griffin and Homer Simpson to make them laugh. To hear my kids happy and hear them laughing and see someone who was not feeling well and knowing that I was bringing them joy by doing so, that made me feel better. I didn't expect necessarily, and this is honest truth, when I've already talked about the history of the icons of the F4L or Jazz and Sons Dream Matches, I had already known about YouTube at that point. My son had seen all my videos, of course. I mean, it's part of his legacy too. It's me. My son's going to be 21 on the 12th. And what's interesting about that is 24 years ago, as of this past Saturday, is in 2 days ago now, because now we're in Monday, I began my wrestling journey. And, a lot of the times we wonder why we do what we do. Why do I shout out these people I don't know from a hole in the wall, really? Why do I believe in them like I do? Because everyone needs to believe in someone, in something. And my son, who was young, he was 11 years old and he was sick, and he said, Dad, we should put this match on YouTube because people are going to want to know who would win between Peter Griffin and Homer Simpson. And me thinking my son was, just not feeling well, but to make him happy, I said, okay, we'll put it on YouTube. And we did. And that is how the icons of the F4L began. People would write in and say, we want to see such and such for such and such, and we'd run our shows together. My son, who was 11 then and smaller than me, as I told him and my daughter when they were younger, that neither one of them were allowed to get taller than me. And as always, my daughter listens. My son, on the other hand, yeah, right. Well, he might have me by a few inches, okay? He might be a couple inches taller than me, but that's okay. If anyone's going to be taller than me, I'm glad it's him. But one of the things I don't say a lot or enough is how proud I am of both of them. But my son particularly, I am proud of, as he is someone who is very much himself. He stays himself. As much as I have tried to get him to experiment with things that are not him, and I don't mean in the bad sense. I mean, I try to expose him to, movies or music that, he claims he doesn't want any part of. And then he'll watch it and he'll be like, oh, this is the greatest thing since rice pudding. My go-to for this, by the way, some fun fact behind the scenes trivia. Growing up, I always told my son he would really enjoy seeing Jurassic Park. I said, you're going to love Jurassic Park. And my son, notorious to say no to everything. No, I'm all set. His quick words, no, I'm all set. I don't want to see it. Don't think so. Nope, no thank you. Nope. Well, my son watched Jurassic Park, and that might be one of his favorite franchise movies of all time. My son is very much a different person, folks, and he is much different than my personality, but I love him that much more because of how different he is, and because of the fact that we could have debates, and he may have some good points in some cases. He's not necessarily into horror movies, but he's not opposed to going to a horror convention because it's something to do. My son can tell you every single stat about every single president of the United States, and he could tell you all kinds of facts about NASCAR. But don't ask him about what various whales are or whatnot. My son's favorite basketball team is the Milwaukee Bucks. His favorite player is Giannis Antetokounmpo. Oddly enough, he's also on his. In case you're wondering, that's how Giannis ends up on his Awesome Ones team. My son is a very emotional individual, where I don't have that ability, and I'm very jealous of this. My son has no problem showing his emotions when he is sad and overwhelmed. And much like my wife, when celebrities or people who are important, as far as people he idolizes, pass on, he takes those things to heart. People like Stan Lee, which sadly enough, Stan Lee passed away on his birthday a number of years ago, and I remember it well because we were celebrating his birthday, and as I was coming downstairs, the news came about, and my son found out, and it was just very upset, and he cried, and he was very devastated by the news of Stan Lee dying. He's into anime, and he's into comics, and Stan Lee is someone who has given him and countless other people, much like my younger days, a hope, and gave them superheroes, that welcomed them into a whole different world. So, it's kind of one of those deals that happens, and it's sad, but I get how that is. I don't usually get emotional when people who I don't know or have never interacted with often pass on. I might, take a moment and feel reflection, and I might feel empathy for it, of course. But because of the fact that I've been exposed to so much, death and sadness in life, it's kind of, don't think that I don't feel sadness. I do. And don't think that I don't feel the heaviness of death. I do. It's just the sad part is when it comes to showing emotion, like crying or feeling sad about someone who had passed on, that doesn't genuinely happen. A friend of mine recently in wrestling we just lost. And I haven't cried, and I don't cry, but I definitely feel sadness for him, especially someone who I worked heavily with. Anyone who knows. But I think about the families who are, attached to those people as well sometimes, and that makes it sad. But in the same sense, I've been around it for so much. I've been exposed to it since a young age, so it's really nothing new that I haven't heard before, and I take a moment to reflect and wish them well in my own self, and that's it. I took a stance a long time ago. Whenever I see someone who had passed on, I'm not going to really acknowledge it on social media. Definitely, I think I do my own tributes in other ways. A lot of people, when people pass on, they make it about themselves to make themselves feel better, I suppose. Like, I don't know how many times I'll see people who, a celebrity who goes to a lot of these conventions or meet and greets, fans will post pictures of them when they were with them last. Well, that's not really for the person you're honoring. That's for you to make yourself feel better, so you can show that you had met them for 2 seconds of their life. But what you're forgetting is when you're posting that picture of you with that person, their family are not often in that photograph. And the reason why they're not in that photograph is because they weren't home with them spending time with their families. Instead, they're taking a picture with you. And that's time that they could have spent with their own family, but they chose to go to, quote, work. And this is a reminder that their families have when they see these people post pictures of them with their fans. And it's a reminder that how much these people give to their fans and how much sacrifice goes into doing that. This is like the wrestling world. A lot of people have no idea what it's like to live on the road of a wrestler. You can go on the road and not see your own house for a year almost. You can get married and not see your own wife or your kids for a number of years. Guys like Cody Rhodes, Bray Wyatt, these third-generation wrestlers, they could probably tell you about what that's like because their dads were always on the road. They were never home. Some people work it into their gimmicks, and some people just acknowledge it, and some people don't acknowledge it at all. That's just the nature of the beast. I mean, Ric Flair wrestled all over the world. I mean, he's had multiple kids. I'm sure they all appreciate what he's done for them. But in the same sense, when he is, missing their birthdays, their graduations, their, celebrations, so he can entertain you and take your picture, and here we are years and years later, it's just a constant reminder. So I don't really post anything when people pass on. I don't make it about me. It's not about me. It's about them. I don't like the post because how horrible is that? You see someone who had passed away and you're going to love it? That's just sickening. So, as much as, social media is a good thing, I think it's important to have that level of tact, I guess you'd say. But the moral of the story is my son is a very emotional and someone who's comfortable showing his emotions, and I respect him for that. In a lot of ways, he's tougher than I am because he's able to do that. I don't have that ability. But what I am proud of is and what I can show is my love. And there's not a day that goes by I don't tell him, my wife, or my daughter that I love them. Because at the end of the day, folks, there will be no question whether or not I love them. If anything could happen, because you know what? Anything can happen at any point in life. No one's guaranteed tomorrow. No one's guaranteed 5 minutes from now. But at the end of the day, as long as you say those words and you make sure they know that, then you don't have to worry if they know that you love them. I grew up with no one saying that to me often or ever. I didn't have a dad, but I made sure that when I became one, I would be the dad. And I have been. And they say kids don't come with a rule book or an instruction guide. Yeah, that's true. I don't necessarily think it is possible to write a book. And I've seen books attempted to be written, how to raise kids. It's not the easiest thing in the world. It's actually the hardest job you'll ever do. It's the only job you pay more for, but is the most rewarding job. That's the job of being a dad. The sacrifice you have to make sure that they get what they need in life. Food, clothing, shelter, support, love, admiration, and support. I'm proud of my son, and no matter what he does in life, I know that he is going to be okay. And I know, and I believe in him, that he is capable of doing whatever he chooses to do. My son is intelligent, he's hardworking, he's attention deal with, and granted, he does feel a lot, and boy does he worry about things, more so than I will. But that's because he is a thinker, and he's also someone who is very, very, very emotional, as I mentioned. But I want to say that I'm proud of him, and if it wasn't for inspiration from him and my daughter and my wife, then I wouldn't be here today to give all of these praises for these other people. I am a role model. I try to be the best example for my own kids. And the knowledge and the whatnot I try to give my kids over the years, I try to pass on to everybody else. There are people out there in the world who are phenomenal human beings who a lot of the time people often pass off or don't give as much acknowledgement to. When I think of someone who is one of the most intelligent people I talk to on a regular basis, someone who gets the F4L and someone who really has I have a lot of respect for. I consider him a brother and I'm proud of him, and that's Jaden Brooks. He's been on the show a few times. He's someone who is a young man who honestly has a lot of my mindset when I was his age. I don't necessarily think we have the same kind of lifestyle in the background, but I do think Jaden Brooks is an example of someone who lives the F4L way, but also continues to make the Dream Master thing a thing. In all honesty, I look at all of these individuals I've met over the years, and if it wasn't for being forced to be at home and having to stay home and help, Sean Awesome graduate high school, then I wouldn't have been on Instagram. I wouldn't have been on all these places and met the amazing people like Jaden Brooks or the Adele Boys or Ryder Lockwood or Jesse Untamed, or Elijah Richardson, Isaiah Trena, Action Jackson Baker, Noah the Nightmare Tyndall. The list goes on and on. Easton McDonald. You know why? Because I wouldn't be on social media. I'd be working. I'd be too busy to turn on the Instagram. Today, I do my best to try to get back to everybody. Anyone who has ever sent me a message or a reply knows I'm going to reply. People often wonder why I don't have as many followers as I should. In all honesty, a lot of that is my own design. I get rid of people on a regular basis. I'm a person who's I'm not really interested in numbers as much as people. I like quality people. I don't like creeps. I don't like people who are disrespectful. And I'm very honest about that. I don't deal with bullies. And I don't deal with people who have no lack or vision. So I just don't follow, or I unfollow, or if they follow me, I just get rid of them. I remove them from my followers. My day usually starts with me removing six or seven, maybe 12 people at a time. So my count would probably be higher if I didn't do that. I think a lot of the people see the things that I do and they kind of piggyback on that, which makes me kind of annoyed because I'm hoping that the message I send and people understand that I actually respect them, and I think that I want nothing but them to be successful in their own right. And I think there's a lot of people out there who aren't as nice as I am, or who aren't who don't look at things the same way as I do. I think there's very much people who, go to people like Riker Van and follow him, and they're not just there because he's a respectful young man and he's polite and whatever. They go because they have other motives, and the same thing goes for a lot of these other individuals here. But as witness as I am, I won't deal with bullies, and I won't deal with people being picked on. I won't deal with people who are doing all that, so don't think that that's going to go unnoticed. But a lot of that comes at a price. A lot of the times, the powers to be, if you would, have silenced me on multiple times because I put claims in protecting people from such things. This year has been an amazing year, and I'm going to talk more about that at another time because this is not the show for that. This is about acknowledging these people who have done an amazing thing. So one more time, I'm going to read off the names of tonight's icons, if you would, or tonight's honorees. And those people are Riker Van Mill, the Adele Boys, Anthony, Mason the Hammer, Ty the Devil, and Troy Adele, Ryder Nation Lockwood, Sheldon Goldberg, Jesse the Untamed, Elijah Richardson, tremendous young man, Isaiah Trena, Rowdy Ryder Woods, Action Jackson Baker, Noah the Nightmare Tyndall, the cast and crew of Terrifier 2 and Terrifier Group, Your New Zealand Family, Speedy East McDonald, Sean Awesome, Jaden Brooks. I wish you guys all the best. I'm proud of every single one of you guys. And we'll be doing another one of these shows, and I'll be giving more updates and shout-outs. Once a week, there'll be one of these acknowledgement shows. And I really do think people should give these people a chance. rather than jump onto the bandwagon, and do it for the right reasons. Don't do it because it looks cute or looks tough. These people are legitimately dream masters and dream warriors, and I believe in all of them. So, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I want to say thank you. Thank you to my aunts. Thank you to, for learning all these new songs and everything else. Let's put an end to the show. Guys, hit that new music. Thank you, and may all your dreams come true. Peace, everybody.